Hey everybody, Gary with Basecamp Trading. Let's take a look at our gold chart today because we had opportunities on both sides of gold today. Great, great chart to trade today. So this was our 30-minute chart in gold, and you can see that in the overnight, we're making higher highs, higher lows in an uptrend. But then as we were coming into the US session, you could see we were making bearish divergence on the 30-minute chart. We had a higher high in price and a lower high in momentum. So we had some bearish divergence, suggesting that we probably at the very least we're going to consolidate and maybe even pull back. As it turns out, we ended up pulling back. You had a reversal doji that triggered to the downside, and the 5 and 13 crossed to the downside. We pushed down, found support at the 50 EMA a couple times in a row, which we know that happens quite often. The 50 EMA is a significant support and resistance line. And then we ended up breaking through there. You set up the bear flag, trigger to the downside. We actually had some good setups off of these topping tails, really. Right here, we left a topping tail and a very bearish bar. Opened at the top, left a little topping tail, and then the entire body of this bar was all selling, triggering a bearish inflection at the same time. And we took a nice 2-minute trade off of that. And then we had another nice trade right here to the downside. And then we got left this big bottoming tail right here. Now the body of this bar was still selling, so it's not a strong bullish hammer, but we did leave this bottoming tail. And then the trigger bar was a very strong bullish trigger bar. Opened at the bottom, broke through the 50 EMA and closed above major resistance, because we know the 50 is significant support and significant resistance. Closed above that, had a little pull down, but then left another bottoming tail, set up what could have been a reversal doji. Had this bar triggered it to the downside, could have been a reversal doji back to the downside. Instead, ended up being a continuation doji, and gold just continued to climb throughout the rest of the day off of this big bottoming tail. So, and we had opportunities to trade on both sides. And here's the charts that we were trading. This was our 2-minute chart, and you can see that we were breaking lower right here, and we had a significant support line right here. We made this nice bearish push down. This bar was all selling. This bar was all selling. Left a bit of a bottoming tail, but then this bar was all selling also. A small tail. And then we consolidated a little bit, set up the bear flag right here, triggered the bear flag, and as that bear flag was triggering, it was also triggering below significant support, and we were able to grab a couple $100 on that move down. And then we left this big bottoming tail, and this was a strong bullish reversal doji. The body of that bar was all buying as well, so left a big bottoming tail, body was all buying. We pushed higher, pulled back, set up what looked like might be a trend reversal breakout back to the upside, because we had a pivot. It wasn't a higher pivot high. Previous pivot high was back here, but we had a pivot. Then we put in a higher pivot low, and had we broken above there, it could have been a trend reversal breakout back to the other side. Didn't turn out to be that way. We end up pulling back up into here, and then we could see that we had set up a wedge. So we put in our trend line right here across the top, put in our trend line right here across the bottom. You can see we had pulled down to this trend line once, pushed back up, and then pulled back down. And then we finally broke through it. And as we were breaking through it, we were triggering bearish momentum. You could see that we had a lower high on momentum. Histograms were turning red, and we were getting bearish momentum to the downside on our 2-minute chart. And that was coinciding with that break lower on the 30-minute chart. And this actually ended up being a nice trade. We were able to enter on the trendline break, which was right at 1837.40-ish. And our target was the mid down here at 1826.80. We know that this is a significant level as well and really tends to attract price. put our take profit just a couple ticks above that because we want to make sure we get filled. And so we were able to run that trade all the way down to 1827. So able to get in around the 1837 40-ish area, took it all the way down to 1827. So we were able to get $1,000 off of this, or you at least had the potential. You at least had the potential to get $1,000 off of this trade. So you had the potential to grab a couple hundred on this one, potential to grab at least 1,000 on this one. Again, those who traded with us know we trade to these targets all the time, and we know that the midline is the significant line. So we get there, at the very least, we're tightening stops. Definitely considering taking profits, especially you're up $1,000 on a trade. You're going to want to take profits on that. So nice push to the downside using some 2-minute chart signals. And then we were actually able to catch that reversal doji back the other way with a pretty nice Unirenko setup. You can see that this was that big giant push to the downside that we traded off the 2-minute chart. And then we set up a trend reversal breakout right here. You can see we came up here and we made a pivot. Wasn't a higher pivot high. Previous pivot high was all the way back here. Now, some people might consider these pivots, these little 1-bar pivots, that's not enough to be a pivot for me, especially on the small Renko chart. I mean, that's not a pivot. A 1-bar pivot's not a pivot. You need 3 or 4 bars for me to consider that a pivot. Now, that's just me personally. You can trade this any way you want, but these are not pivots. These are just pullbacks in a downtrend, and definitely not pivots as far as I'm concerned. So anyhow, we had a lower pivot low. Now this was a pivot, several bars on each side. So definitely a pivot here. So we had a lower pivot low here, definitely a pivot here, several bars on each side of this. So we had a pivot here, not a higher pivot high. Again, our pivot high was all the way back here, but we did have a pivot. And then here we put in a pivot, a higher pivot low. Again, 3 or 4 bars on each side of it. So definitely a pivot right here. No question about that. And then we were triggered the trend reversal breakout above that pivot right there, which was 1831.20. And that triggered the way we like it. These Renko trend reversal breakouts, we like them and want them to trigger on the right side of the cloud and the right side of the smooth 50, because we know that often, like for example here, the cloud can be resistance, kind of pulled back into it and down. We also know that the smooth 50 can be resistance as well. So tend not to take these into the cloud and into the smooth 50. However, this one didn't trigger until this bar right here, actually. This bar was our trigger bar, because our trigger bar was 1831.20. Actually, it was this bar right here. This bar right here, 1831.30. So it triggered in 1 tick above. So this was our trigger bar right here. But notice our momentum had gone positive. So we had bullish momentum. We had our moving averages back in alignment at that point. The 18 was above the 34, above the 50 SMA. Now not above the cloud in the smooth 50. A couple of them were, but not everything. But we're reversing trend. Your moving averages are lagging indicators, so they're rarely going to be perfect on a trend reversal breakout. But we were on the right side of the cloud and the right side of the smooth 50, and this ended up being a nice push to the upside. Trend to Pro 2.0 keeping us in the trade, hitting extended, just get out right on the very first reversal bar. Get this many bars extended on 2.0, I just get out on the reversal bar. But you had the potential to grab $600-700. If you got out on the reversal bar, you grabbed 600. You actually had the potential to grab a little more depending on how you were managing your trade, but definitely out right there. So I could have grabbed $600 on the trend reversal breakout right here. Now you had a wick off the 18 as well right here, and you could have potentially, again, all depends on how you're managing your trade, potentially grabbed another $300 off of this trade. Now we were a little extended at this point. I didn't take this trade personally, but you did have the potential on a Trender Pro 2.0 signal, wick off the 18, to grab another couple $100 off of that one. Here you were making bearish divergence right here. You'd made a higher high in price, lower high in momentum. So you probably weren't interested in these wicks off the 18 here. You were making divergence, you need a pullback and a reset on momentum at this point. So probably weren't trading these. I mean, I guess you could have. You would have taken a loss there. Could have grabbed a target here, but really not good setups because, again, we had bearish divergence and momentum was weakening. You don't want to be taking long trades when momentum is weakening. So again, some really nice opportunities to trade both sides of gold today.